Welcome to the Tipsy Tennis Podcast. I'm in Brooklyn. I'm at home in my backyard, sitting with a Fort Greene local. We had a good tennis hitting session right before this.
We did.
We're gonna see each other next week. We might even play against each other next week at the 5-0 USTA Eastern Sectionals. He's representing the Metro region. I'm representing Long Island. So we'll see how that goes. But other than that, he has his own podcast as well called the Toure Show, where he interviews prominent black figures and a couple tennis players, which we're going to get into as well, because I'm very interested to hear those encounters. And really good guy from the period of time that I've met him.
It hasn't been that long.
A few weeks. He saw me kick some butt at the Fort Greene tournament.
You sure did.
Yeah.
You came to the Fort Greene tournament and made some noise, and people were like, "Who's that guy?" And the sound of the serve was like, "Who's that guy?"
Boom.
And you beat somebody who we think of as really good, who's really good in our community.
Mm-hmm.
So to beat him was like, "Oh, who's that guy?"
I know, right?
So people were definitely like, "Wait, I don't know. I've never heard of him before."
Funny enough, grew up in Brooklyn, like 10 minutes away from Fort Greene. I just haven't spent too much time there, just because it's tough to get a court.
It is.
You got to get up early in the morning. And,
Well, we'll help bring you into some of our situation, but it is tricky to get a court.
Yeah. But without further ado, I would like to introduce Toure from the Toure Show.
Thanks.
What's your last name?
No, we don't use that.
We don't use that. Toure. So the first question that I like to ask any of my guests when they first come on, how did you get started playing tennis?
My dad called on his way home and he said, "I'm bringing home a really special gift for you and your sister. She's a year younger than me."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking it's going to be a Batman car or something like that. And it was this little wooden green tennis racket. And I was like, "You said it was going to be something special."
How old were you?
6.
Okay.
And my sister was 5. And it was the most special gift he ever gave me. But obviously at the moment I was like, "What is this?" But he was way into tennis.
Mm-hmm.
It was the 70s, and America was having a rise in the number of people, a precipitous rise throughout the decade of the people who were playing tennis and watching tennis.
Who are some players that were playing? Sorry to cut you off,
Yeah.
but what are some players you were watching when you were a little kid when you first got introduced? Going back to
I watched McEnroe Borg when McEnroe lost, and then when he came back and won, we loved McEnroe. Connors, Chris Everett, Martina Navratilova. Trying to remember that early period. I mean, Steffi Graf, I'm thinking she's like later, like I'm a teenager by then, but definitely McEnroe and Borg,
Connors.
like Yannick Noah, Connors. Eli Nastasi was like, "Oh, he's a terrible person. He could never behave like Nastasi." Of course, Borg was just this epic, dominant figure throughout the 70s, into the 80s a little, but the 70s he was crushing and doing it looking great. He just seemed super cool and chill. So yeah, we started taking tennis lessons at this club in Dorchester called Sportsman's Tennis Club, which is kind of like a known thing. It's a not-for-profit club. It's a whole thing of a mission of like, we're going to take black kids from the city, teach them how to play tennis so they get college scholarships. So
ahead of its time.
Yeah, so the whole thing was adults pay so kids can play. So the summer camp would be like $100 so you can play, 9 to 5 every day for the kids, but then the adult courts were not terribly expensive, but just the structure of it was not for profit. It was not meant to be caking up, and they weren't caking up. They were giving lots of kids the opportunity to learn the game. So, yeah, I was there like every day, like after school.
Nice.
All summer. I never went to any other summer camp. There was really never any other after-school activity that mattered, that we took seriously. Like, it was just always all about tennis. Arthur Ashe came to visit our club when I was little.
Nice.
There's a picture of me and Billie Jean King from when I was 10
Huh.
when she came to visit. So, we were just like serious about getting better, going to tournaments, making noise, and so you could maybe get a college scholarship.
Did you get a college scholarship?
I did not get a college scholarship. They helped me be the best player I could have been at that age.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Emory. I had spoken to the coach before.
Mm-hmm.
I was like 20th in New England in
That's
the
really good.
18s.
That's really
That was
good.
okay. You're certainly not. You're not winning any tournaments. You're not getting into any semifinals to get to 20th, right? But like, it was the best that I could have done. I spoke to the coach. There was a little tournament for the new recruits. I played the number one recruit in the first round of the tournament. One set tournament. I lose 7-6. I'm like, okay, this is good. This is good,
Okay.
right? I'm showing it. I'm like neck and neck. In the consolation round, I played the number two recruit, right?
Wow.
He lost in the first round, right? I lose to him 7-6. I'm like, this is good. I'm like, it'd be better if I had beaten them. And I'm like, right there. And he cut me. And I was like, so upset. It was so devastating. And, partly I think it was the universe saying, like, there are other things in the world. Because it was all about tennis for me.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to become a pro. I wasn't going to become a teacher, right? And that time away from the game allowed me to open up and think about other things that became sort of the crux of my career. But the core of it, I came back to the game years later because I was walking up the hill toward the Fort Greene courts with this guy, and this guy was hitting on the court, and he was one of the better players at the area at the time. And I said to my friend who never played tennis, was like, I'm actually better than that guy. And he was like, and he knew, he's like, I never saw you pick up a racket. He's like, bullshit, you're not better. And all he said was bullshit. And I'm so insane that I was like, I will show you. And I took like 6 months. I got the racket. I got drilling. I found a partner. I got back to hitting. And finally, after 6 months, I still didn't know him. I just went up to him and like, hey, I want to play you. And he's like you? Like, you're like nothing. But he played me. And then next thing you know, I'm beating him for love. And he's like shocked. Like, somebody came out of nowhere. And then we became friends. We started playing all the time. But
Kind of like me at Fort Greene, pulling up out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. You're so proud of that. Good for you.
I resonate with that story a lot because for me, I grew up when I first started playing tennis. It was at Prospect Park Tennis Center.
Nice.
You know Winston?
No.
Yeah,
I used to be over there a lot, probably before that. You know Gary? Gary, he's got a Russian last name. He's big on Instagram. He grew up there and like made it to the pros, and now he's a big time coach.
Nice.
And I used to hit with him when he was 10.
Okay.
So I was around Prospect Park like a lot, like 20, 25 years ago.
I started maybe like 20 years ago.
Okay.
Back when they had like the trailer,
Yeah,
and, like,
yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So my brother started playing. I have an older brother. He's 3.5 years older than me, and it was just kind of like an after-school type of thing. But then, and he had tried basketball, soccer, but like for some reason tennis stuck. And I was always on court. I was probably started going on court when I was like maybe 3 years old, and watching for like the first kind of year. And I'm looking at everything. So when I picked it up, I was like, I got good pretty quick.
Because you've been watching.
I was like watching it and studying it and looking at how he plays. I remember actually the first time I was like maybe 10 years old,
Yeah.
maybe even 9 years old,
Yeah.
where when they teach like beginners, they do like arms up, stand to the side, swing up, over the shoulder,
Okay.
basic stuff. And that was how I was always taught. But I saw my brother was hitting with topspin, and I was thinking like, I want to hit like that. And so, I have my lesson. The coach, he just starts feeding me balls, and I started like trying to hit with topspin. And as I was hitting everything into the ground and into the net, I wasn't getting the ball over. But he saw what I was trying to do, and like I feel like a good coach would have like stopped and corrected me,
But
but he didn't say anything. But he saw what I was doing, and I was like kind of figuring it
trying to
out
brush.
on my own.
Yeah.
And so that was like a part of like my origin story. I was playing juniors. I played some like junior ITFs.
Really?
Yeah.
How high did you get in the East?
In the East, it wasn't too great. I think I got to like maybe 50
Okay.
in the East
Okay.
when I was
East is tougher
18.
than most sections.
Yeah. Funny thing. So I'll tell you the story a little bit later. But I played a tournament when I was 14 years old against Alex Kovacevic.
Who's
He's like 120 in the world right now. American player, one-handed backhand. He played Djokovic in the first round of French Open this year.
okay?
He made his Grand Slam debut this year.
Okay.
So, and I wanted to go pro.
Yeah.
I made the decision. It's like it's not worth investing. Like trying to go pro. Like I was just thinking, go to college, a little bit more stable. If anything, I'll play tennis in college. And so I went to Fordham, and
Oh, my wife went to Fordham.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I was trying to like walk onto the team. I was like talking to the coach. My brother was playing on the team, on the varsity team as well.
And they didn't let you walk on.
No. And I was even talking to him maybe my junior year already. Be like, yo, I'm looking at Fordham. I want to, blah, 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 blah. He ended up recruiting one guy who was ranked lower than me. Recruiting, not walk on, recruited. Who was ranked lower than me. And then another guy who has never played a tournament ever. But he just had like a really good recruiting video. So I was devastated. I'm like, that was the number one thing I was looking forward to
Right.
in college.
Right.
But I love tennis so much that I didn't stop. I joined the club team my freshman year, and then basically the sophomore year I was like the president of it. I just took it over. There wasn't much organization to it, so I grew up in the tennis world so much that organizing a team like this was like kind of second nature for me.
Right.
And everybody listened to me, respected me. We got to nationals. I led us to nationals.
Shit.
And that was like I think in my opinion, it was such a better experience than if I
Okay.
would have played varsity,
Okay.
because it was more laid back. I was able to do other stuff. I transferred in the beginning as in the business school, and then I ended up transferring and getting a degree in physics.
You got your college degree is in physics?
Yeah. And if I had played varsity, I would have never made that switch, because business would have been a little bit easier, less time
Sure.
commitment.
Sure.
And so I'm just like, you know what? If I'm not going to play tennis, let me dive into something. So I dove into it, and things ended up working out, I think, a little bit better. I got this podcast going,
Woo!
And it's like, it's everything is about tennis,
Yeah.
but it's not only playing tennis. It's kind of like a.
Who were the hot pros when you were coming up? Who you were inspired by?
So, I was like one thing when I was like 12 years old. When I was actually 10 years old, this is 2008, and that's when Federer was on fire, and you had this like.
Okay.
I
First Federer, before Djokovic and Nadal arrived,
yeah.
when he's beating up on Leighton Hewitt and
Leighton
Andy
Hewitt,
Roddick,
Roddick, yeah, Safin, a little bit.
Safin. I loved Safin.
I love Safin.
Oh.
He's such a cool guy. So like, what was really cool and very unique for my generation specifically is that we were kids when this was always happening, and like people, you've lived through so many tennis eras, but like it's the eras that when you're a kid, the ones that are inspiring you, the
Yeah.
ones that's motivating you to become a better player.
Yeah.
Those are always like the special ones, and I got to grow up during the era of Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, which was it was so inspiring. I remember like going to practice, going to the gym, doing stuff like when I really don't want to, and just hearing like my coach's voice in my head saying like, what would Djokovic do? What would Nadal do? Are they eating Chinese food and playing video games after school? Or are they training and stuff? I'm like, shit, they're training.
I mean, they're not even going to school
They're
in
not
a
going to
real
school.
way at all. They're just playing all day long. If we could play 6 to 8 hours a day,
Oh, yeah.
it'd be ridiculous.
Yeah, and so I wanted to make that switch. I wanted to do that and like play tennis full time.
I wanted to go to voluntary. My parents were like, "No, what the fuck are you
Yeah.
talking about?"
So that's a little bit of what my origin story. I don't think I really I don't think I said that on the podcast yet. There's been like bits and pieces
Yeah.
of it, but I think that's a more
So your so you're 4 years of club tennis.
3.
3 years.
And then I was like the chaperone, and actually I got invited. I got offered the JV coach position for Fordham Prep,
Oh shit.
which is on the same campus,
Right.
using the same courts and stuff. So I might do that in the spring, just kind of
Oh.
like a victory lap. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And then maybe work with the club team as well to do some tipsy tennis
Good
stuff.
shit.
You've built a pretty good following. You've had some fantastic guests on your podcast. How did that like get started, and like where and
The
and-
podcast?
yeah, and how did tennis ever play like a role in your professional development?
I mean, tennis has been maybe 5% of my writing throughout the years, but like I love the opportunities I get to write about tennis.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a story about Capriati when she had won, and she'd come back and won the Australian after she won the Australian Open.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that was so exciting there, I was like, you gotta let me hit with you. I hung out with her for like 2 days in Florida in like
Nice.
November. Like, you gotta let me hit with you, like just for the story. And she's like, I'm like, I'm not like terrible. Like, I can return your ball. Like, just And I kept asking, and she kept being like, no, we'll see. A lot of people would just be like, yes, for the story. I want to be in Vogue. That was for Vogue or whatever. But like, she's like, we'll see. I don't know. So finally, toward the end of our window together, she said, yes, you can jump on the court with me. I'm like, this is great. Like, I'm going to have this experience. And it was an extraordinary experience. Probably the best player I've ever hit with. I think certainly the best player. I mean, I hit with James Blake once for a couple minutes, but he was at the net. So I didn't really experience his ball.
Yeah.
And the thing that leapt out, she's hitting it just down the middle. So she's being nice. Obviously, she can paint the court however she wants, where you would never return 2 balls. But she's hitting down the middle. And she's being nice as far as the pace, but I'm never late, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's not hitting the ball so fast that I'm late. But the ball's so heavy.
With spin?
Yeah, like you feel like you're hitting underwater,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's really working your forearm, because it's like I'm like sort of forking the ball back because it's so like heavy ball. And I thought that was really interesting. You can perceive the speed when you're like a few rows back from the court, but you can't perceive how weighty the ball that they hit is. So that was really, really interesting.
Fun fact: did you know that men and women use different two types of balls on the professional tour?
I don't know if I knew that.
So this is something I learned when I was a ball boy for the U.S. Open. And if you look at the ball, this is a jeu de paume ball. This isn't a real tennis ball, but you'll get the idea. So on the print, if it was like a men's ball, it would say like Wilson U.S. Open,
Yeah.
Wilson in black, U.S. Open in red,
Yeah.
and then on the women's balls it'd be reversed.
Oh, that's hard to remember.
And so like, I mean, as an umpire or like as a ball kid, you kind of have to. It's mostly like the umpire's job to make
So
sure
the
they have the right
women's
ones.
ball,
It's a little bit lighter.
It's a little lighter.
There's I think the men use extra duty, and the women use regular duty.
Interesting.
And then they get new balls every 7 and then 9 games. So it's 7, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, and the reason for the 7 is because they warm up with the balls.
Right.
And then they start the match.
Right.
So it's
right.
like consistent
Same
throughout the
time.
entire thing. So
Interviewed Andy Roddick a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
That was really exciting, and really getting to see him as a sort of. He was very much a man child. He had obviously had a man's body, but like when you get into like what are you interested in, he was like a big boy. Who else? Interviewed James
I saw
Blake.
Eubanks.
He interviewed Chris Eubanks.
Was that recent?
Yeah, that was pretty recent. Taylor Townsend as well.
I'm curious, what are your thoughts on Eubanks right now? Because I've known him since he was a college player.
Yeah.
And he's kind of been like on my radar.
Yeah.
Same thing with like Mackenzie McDonald. I ball boyed for Mackenzie McDonald. He's like a junior
Wow.
in college. They had like
Crazy.
a ITA tournament at the U.S. Open, so they used the ball kids. What do you think a guy like Eubanks is here to stay, or is it just kind of like a quick?
No, I think that he has some fundamentals that will allow him to be a high level killer for a while. Who knows if it's going to be consistent quarterfinal level, but like this is one of the great serves in the
Yeah.
world.
Yes, for sure.
And it's a great forehand, and he can volley really well. So like there's a lot of serious weapons. And in the Ultimate Tennis Showdown interview, he talked about getting to a sense of I belong here, right? Where before he wasn't sure. And when you go into a match and you don't really think you can beat the other guy, like you can't make that go away. You can't pile on positive comments, but there's a person down below who's like, but you've never beaten him. And like you try as much as you want, but but to really eliminate that sort of a voice and be like, no, I'm really like it should be normal for me to get to the quarters. Like I belong at a high level. Like when you start to really believe that, like deep down, like it makes a big difference. But that's a big part of tennis, I think. How you think deep down. If you're too confident that you'll beat the other person, you won't play your best. And if you're certain that you can't beat them, it's hard to get to your best.
You need like that perfect like balance between like you need to be confident, but you also kind of need to have a sense of fear, I would say.
You think?
Because I think the fear is the motivator, is the thing that like is the emotion that's gonna draw the best out of you when you're in like fight or flight mode.
See, I would be physically tense if I was afraid. And
That's
I think
true
a
as
lot
well.
about like how to get to the loosest physically that you can. And if you're like in the moment, you're not going to be afraid because
True.
you can't lose a tennis match fast, right? It's one increment at a time. You cannot score 2 or 3 runs or points and like it's always a one pointer, right? Every freaking point, every freaking game. But like I've been thinking a lot about gratitude, and you're grateful to be challenged, and it like relaxes you and it focuses you into the moment. And to not have that other voice at all that like is thinking like we should beat this person, which is toxic fuel, or this is a very difficult person for us to beat, which is also bad fuel. Just to eliminate that voice altogether, if at all possible.
No, that's really interesting. You said something that I'm kind of thinking about right now, which makes complete sense, but I never actually put the words to it. You can't win the match quick, or you can't lose quick. And I think just kind of going back in my head and honestly playing back the Fort Greene tournament, in my head, I felt like I was trying to win the match too quick, and which it led to a lot more errors than I wanted. Like I wasn't, I was just trying to do it quick, and that ended up backfiring on me because I had the wrong mentality going into the match. For any poker players out there, if you're playing a poker tournament, you can't win the tournament in the first hand, but you could definitely lose in the first hand. And so, it's incremental, and it's patience, and it's being in the moment.
Yeah.
It's taking point by point. And, I think, maybe the fear comes from, or like, when people are nervous,
Yeah.
they're thinking about the result. What if I win? What if
Right.
I lose?
Right.
And it's not always like, especially when you're playing somebody that like is, let's say, better than you, and you have that negative voice in your head saying like, oh, you shouldn't win, or maybe, or the doubt. But one question that I always asked myself when I was playing against a better opponent is, what if I win? And just kind of thinking like, what it can lead to this, and you can get lost in it a bit. And I see that. I think you see that on the Pro Tour as well. Like, you'll have a player break out, and then everything, I think, gets like too exciting, and that could be distracting for them being on court.
One thing I think about, everybody's going to play at a certain level for like the first like 20, 25 minutes of the match. And then your secondary level of cardio will kick in, right? The first 20, 25 minutes, you're not tired, right? But then you've done so much starting and stopping and running that you start to get a little tired. So how do you play when you start to get a little tired? And can you maintain the level and the precision versus what the other person is asking of you there, right? And I think everybody drops a little bit at that point. You may continue winning or not, but like that is an important marker to not get too up or down about what happens right away at the beginning.
That's not, I just had an idea for a exercise that you could do with, I would say, mostly juniors or even competitive players on the college level or even pros, but competitive is, let's say, we've all heard like A game, what you're saying is like the first level, second level, things like that. As a coach, to just take a survey, let's say 15 minutes into practice, once they're decently warmed up, and ask the player, what level do you feel like you're at right now? And they'll say like 1, 2, 3, whatever. And then you ask the player, an hour in, hey, what level do you feel you're playing at right now? I feel like I dipped down to like a 2. I was at a 1, but now I'm at a 2. So okay, just keep that in mind. Continue training. Don't think too much about it, but just acknowledge it.
Okay.
Ask them again in 2 hours, and things like that. To kind of, I think it's important as a player to have that kind of awareness to gauge where you're at, not being overconfident, but not being too underconfident. Kind of find where you're at, and also to help you gauge the levels of what level 1 looks like, what level 2 looks like, what level 3 looks like, and then also tailoring exercises to target those specific levels. You're level 1, great. We don't really need to focus too much on that. Let's say being aggressive or serving volume, whatever it is. Let's work on level 2. How do we work on level 2? Let's do 30 minutes of fitness right before we start to train. So we start practice at level 2. And so now
No, that would be amazing.
You're able to isolate each the levels of
to be able to
somebody's
play
game.
when you're tired, yeah.
That would
I
be.
think Dingles is stupid.
I'll be honest.
It's kind
That's
of
a great
dumb,
question.
It is kind of a dumb game.
I've only played it like a handful of times. I'm not really a big fan of it because, for one thing, you need 4 players that are on the same level.
Pretty much. If we were like you played doubles with us today. Typically, a 4 green, and I don't know how people do it elsewhere, but all of our foursomes of 2 hours are going to be, we're going to play some dingles and then team singles and then we play doubles.
I like that. So playing dingles today, I kind of liked it as the first game that we did.
Yeah.
It's kind of a warm up.
Yeah.
It's a transition
Yeah,
into
it's a
the other
warm-up.
games.
Yeah.
And
It's not a main thing, but I'm like, it's kind of a dumb game.
yeah, I think that's a great game where like you're just throwing in something new. You get moving a little bit more. Like once somebody calls dingles, you're running to the net, or one person should be running to the net. I think
You should. Some people just don't go to the net.
you saw me. I was
No, you were.
poking it.
You were. So with the last, we got rained out today, but on the we should memorialize this on the last point
Oh man.
of our match today. We were on opposite sides. You hit a shot that probably should have been a winner, and I tracked it down and like sort of flick backhanded it like over your head into like the backhand corner.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that was a pretty sick shot. Like that, I did not expect anything to come back from that. And you were behind the baseline and nailed a tweener down the line right into like the doubles alley. And it was like, right, I think you hit
Hard
it
as
on the
well.
line, right?
I think it was like on the singles line. It was like it was clean.
It was definitely hard. It was definitely like on the line, and like we were like, I can't believe I just saw that. That was fucking incredible.
I have a confession. I could have hit it overhead on that lob. I decided to hit a tweener.
See, okay.
And just ruin your tennis career.
You didn't ruin my tennis career, but I hate the tweener I hate the tweener because I think that it is always a mistake, right? Like you've already made several bad decisions that lead you to there, but like there's no way that the best option can be to turn your back to your opponent, let the ball drop down to your knees or lower, and hit it through your, rather than to run around the ball and hit a forehand, or if you're out of position to hit a backhand. But the thing is, I don't even fully blame you, but tennis media, tennis TV, tennis channel, whatever. If somebody anywhere in the globe hits a tweener, it will be replayed, ad nauseum, clipped that for Twitter and for Instagram, whatever. So they've made us think that this is this amazing thing. I'm like, we shouldn't even be doing that at all.
Did you see Alcaraz's tweener though against Tommy Paul? That was
I'm
sick.
I'm curious, and I think some of the older journalists would be able to break this down, like the history of the tweener, because nobody hit tweeners in the 70s.
Can I tell you the moment that changed tennis history?
Tell me.
2009.
Yeah.
U.S. Open semifinals. Federer against Djokovic. They're in the fourth set. Djokovic is serving love 30. 4-5. They start playing the point. Federer's wearing his red polo with Nike. They're playing the point, and Federer hits a tweener. You know which one I'm talking about.
From way behind the baseline.
You know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Down the line,
Yeah.
passes Djokovic
Yeah.
to set him up for 3 match points.
Yeah.
It was that moment in tennis history where tweener got the golden ball.
Were people hitting tweeners before that?
Yes.
So, but when did that? Because
Nobody gave a shit about it until Federer did that.
But I don't
at
think
the
in
US
the
Open.
80s anybody. I don't remember in the 80s people doing it. I remember seeing not long ago video of Connor's one point where he gets to net 3 times and gets lobbed, goes back, hits a forehand, gets back into net, gets pushed back, hits a forehand. He's never even thinking of. I mean, like, you're running in a certain way if it's early to go for a tweener than versus where you have to go for a forehand.
They had different rackets though.
I have to ask my friends. It was somewhere must have been somewhere in the 90s or the double O's where people started thinking about hitting tweeners. But I don't know what popularized it.
Oh, Federer.
No. But it was already a thing before 09.
I think it wasn't even called like tweener back then. It was called like an in-between shot. They didn't call it tweeners. And then like I remember as a kid, like I started hearing like tweener. There's some slang.
But it's
like
clearly
tweener,
a terrible choice.
You know,
because also when I'm your opponent, I was diagonal from you when you hit that ball, right? So I had no play on any down the line shot at all, right? But if I'm playing singles and I lob over your head and you set up for a tweener, I know exactly where you're going to go. Your body is structured that there's only one place you can go, so I can already, before you make contact, I can move to the spot where you're going to hit the ball.
I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know where the ball is going to go when I hit it sometimes.
It's going to go right directly between your hips.
But it could be a forehand, it could be a backhand. I think the tweener is a youthful shot.
You said useful or
useful?
Okay.
Useful. It's a
Not
useful
youthful.
shot. It is youthful, but it's also useful in on a psychological level, because sometimes do you ever like somebody hits a tweener and then you hit the next shot and it isn't quite a winner, and then you kind of like start playing the point again. You just feel this immense pressure to win this point because you're like, fuck this guy for hitting a tweener. I gotta win this point.
No,
right
I
now.
feel like it's disrespectful and it was a stupid choice, and I feel like I should win the point because you made a dumb choice. I mean, if I get ahead in the point, I feel like I should close it out and win the point, right? So if I hit the ball over your head and you've turned your back to me, I am ahead in the point, right? If it's poker, I have 95% chance to win this hand.
Yeah.
So you better fucking close.
And in the long run, you got the 5% chances where you just knock it out of the park and make a highlight reel, and then the other 95%.
See, you're doing it because the chance you might make a highlight reel, not because it's the best choice.
Oh, absolutely. No, the best choice was an overhead. I could
Right.
easily boom.
It would have been a great overhead, but you hit a winner anyway.
But the one shot that's actually really good is if you know how to lob off the tweener, because the person always comes to net.
Sure.
And
yeah.
so if you can get good at lobbing it back, I think that would be a
That's
very
hard.
useful.
I'm
it is.
anti-tweener in general.
What about underhand serve?
I mean, okay, I wouldn't do it because I like my serve.
Mhm.
And I think that I would... Losing a chance to hit an overhand serve, I think that would be a loss.
Mhm.
Right? Like, I did not start the point the best way that I could. It's a reasonable tactic. You know, you might just throw away the point.
I think it's useful if like if you have like Nadal who's standing 20 feet behind the baseline.
But who does that in the amateurs? Nobody does that.
Nobody in amateurs. On the pros, when they're serving 130 miles an hour,
Yeah.
Medvedev, he stands back.
But nobody at our level is standing so far
No.
back that you're... Now, if you're not fully paying attention, you might get a slow start on it. But, like, it's hard. I feel like it's hard. You're really risking that you're starting the point in a bad position.
I think at least at a lower level, you need to have a really good serve
Yeah.
to be able to like polarize that range. Because if your serve isn't as good and you're a little bit lower, then you need this to be a little bit wider gap. And I remember that when I was playing against Nick, I was bombing my serves, 120 miles an hour, 110, just bombing it to the point where he yelled out, "Holy shit! Why am I playing John Isner?"
He said that.
And so like I hit. I remember I was playing. I hit. The game starts. I hit an ace out wide. I hit another ace out wide or down the tee. I hit another ace, or like he barely touches it. I'm up 40 love, and I look to my friend who's looking on the side. I'm like, yo, should I hit him with the underhand serve right now after serving 3 bombs?
Dude, that would be disrespectful.
I didn't. I ended up, I respected him too much. So, but if it was like somebody I didn't know,
He definitely told me after the match, the guy was serving 110 on the lines. And well, he's exaggerating. The person was nuts. He's serving very fast. He said he's serving very fast. No, he really meant 110. It's a big problem.
Did you see the video of that yet? No, I gotta get
Of
that
the
video.
match?
Yeah,
No.
that's gonna go on YouTube. I'm gonna make some highlights of that. Guys, this was Nick, aka Big 3 on Big 3 Tennis on Twitter.
Yeah.
He's got 26,000 followers. Shout out, love you, Nick. He's featured in one of my videos.
Should get him on the pod.
He is. He might be the. I have one guest after this, and then I'm gonna try to bring him on.
You should.
We gotta set up a time, and he doesn't even live far from here anyway.
When the first year that James Blake was hot at the U.S. Open, I had a media badge. So that means you can walk around in the tunnel, like areas where players might go. Over and over, I had this experience where I would be, let's say, 20 yards away from a player, and they're like, "Oh, hey," and they're lighting up like, "Oh, it's James," and then they get close and be like, "Oh, it's not James." So when we finally met, it was like, "Oh my God, I've been getting that too. Oh my God." He's a super nice guy.
I'm not gonna lie, you kind of look like Eric Andre.
A lot of people say that.
Funny enough, I saw he was on your podcast as well.
He and I had the same thing. We ran into each other in Brooklyn, and he was like, "Yeah, people definitely have said to him, 'You look like Toure,' and people definitely said to me like, 'Oh my God, you're so funny.' I'm like, okay, sure, okay, but he's cool. I love him. I mean, yeah, I went to Roddick's house late in his career and just like hung out with him for like a day, and we're just like sitting on the couch eating yesterday's pizza, watching Steve-O videos, and like just talking about tennis and life and this and that. And he was fun. He was like a big boy, like a grown-up boy, but he's great. He was totally cool. I'm trying to think, who else have I covered? I mean, I've covered other people, but not in a... I'm trying to think of... Well, yeah. I did a story on... That was actually really interesting. I did a story for Tennis Magazine that I was really proud of. When I was growing up, used to get that big book that talked about what was going on nationally. I never made it to nationals, but I wanted to see like what's going on, the kids who make it to nationals. So so when I was in the tens, number one 12 and under in the country was Al Parker Jr. And then he was number one again in the 14s, which happens sometimes. But usually kids start growing and things start differentiating. And then he was number one again in the 16s. And that, like, never happens, right? And then, again, in the 18s, he was number one.
This is a tank.
And it's like, holy shit. And then he went to UGA. And then I never heard anything of him again. And I was like, what happened to Al Parker Jr.? Because he seemed like surefire pro superstar. Because he just dominated American tennis his whole junior life. And I went to Tennis Magazine and talked about him. They did not remember him, but they were excited for me to go try and do the story. I wrote Al Parker Jr. a letter, having no idea what he would say to a Tennis Magazine journalist saying, I want to talk to you, right? He might be like, I hate tennis, get away from me. He might be, like, I have no, what do I say to this person? But he was very gracious. I mean, I remember spending a lot of time trying to strategize, like, what do we say in this letter? He's very gracious. He's like, sure, come down and talk to me. Met his parents, spent time with him. He's in financial services. Nobody in his world knows he was a superstar tennis player. And he's doing great, and he's married and life is great. But, we talk about, well, what, he doesn't play at all. What happened? He had part of it was that he had a back injury at UGA that never fully healed, that kind of sucked away some of his love of the game. But really, like, when he was in the juniors, it was a communal experience. He knew all the other guys. They would hang out by his mom's van in between matches. And it's like the group, the camaraderie. You see people you know at tournaments that you like, and you vibe with them, and you have a good time. College gives you some of that. Pros gives you none of that.
No. I mean, some people, especially on like the ITF level, they'll have like a team, 4, 5, 6 players who all travel together.
Yeah.
Split travel expenses,
Yeah.
like hotels and stuff like that. If you know people.
But he's on the ATP level.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is very lonely. Outside of playing tennis, it's kind of boring, this life. And he talked about being in Asia at a tournament. There's like nobody in the crowd. Somebody, either his opponent hit a kick serve, it hit a rock in the service box and jumped over his head. And he was like, what am I doing? This is not it. And he quit. And I don't think he ever even broke like 300. But like, the heart wasn't in it. The joy that he got from the community and the camaraderie of the juniors had been lost. And he was like, I'm done. And he left, and he created a whole other life that was really, that's really fulfilling for him. But it was really, it's really interesting for me just as a journalist, because most stories, the person is handed up on a platter, right? Vogue got the opportunity to do Capriati, and they asked me to do it, right? Rolling Stone gets access to Roddick, and they choose me to go do the story. This, I had to, like, figure out, how do I find this person? How do I ask this person? Like, can I come? This is a good 25 years ago.
So when communication was not as easy as it is today?
No, I couldn't email him. It was definitely before email him. I wrote a letter and mailed it to him. But I was, I loved that whole thing. That was exciting.
Yeah, I think
I mean, like, living in New York City, I have gotten to know John McEnroe. Like, if I see him, he will stop and talk to me. Like, he probably remembers my name, but he knows, like, I know this person, I should talk to him. I'm like, and I had a John McEnroe life-size cutout in my room when I was growing up. I watched, as a teenager, I watched McEnroe. Boy, he was my favorite player when I was in the juniors. So to, like, know him, I've interviewed him. I've seen him at his club. I've seen him out in the we were at this Kanye show years ago, And so I'm sitting in, let's say, row 3, and John and Patty are like the row right behind me, like at my shoulder, and Lenny Kravitz is like right next to them in the row behind.
Wow.
And it's a much longer story, but at one point, Kanye went on this ridiculous rant about the fashion world not respecting him or whatever, and my wife was there, so I can attest this true that John McEnroe said, "Toure, make it stop," and I'm like, that he knew my name and that he could you can you do something here, like, him, right, like, and obviously there's nothing we do, but just like, oh my god, like John McEnroe. I mean, we were chit chatting and laughing about Kanye the whole night, but like, oh my god.
That's
like,
cool. What's
fucking crazy.
I played in December of last year or 2 years ago, something like that. I was playing a UTR tournament at Randall's Island.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the UTR tournaments are co-ed.
Mm-hmm.
It's just based on rating.
Mm-hmm.
So in the first round, I played Victoria McEnroe. That's Patrick McEnroe's daughter.
Okay.
I think she's like 16 or something like that.
She good?
She's solid.
Okay.
I mean, she was good. I was like playing. I was like, I think I won the first set like 6-3 or 6-4. I wasn't like going like too hard because it was also, I'm like a 23 or 24-year-old guy who can.
Wait, how old are you?
I'm 25 right now.
You're 25?
Yeah, how old do you think I was?
I don't know. I didn't think you were that young.
And so like I could still like I could bomb like 120
Yeah.
mile per hour serves, but I was just playing, just making a match out of it, trying to hit a lot of balls, rally a lot,
Yeah.
so I could also just play more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was in the beginning of the second set. I think I was up like 1-0, 2-0.
Yeah.
I sprained my ankle. I like lean one side, she hits it that way. I try pushing off, and then really bad. But the ego inside of me is like, I'm not gonna lose to the 16-year-old girl. So I ended up finishing the match. Now I started hitting like big serves and just kind of like smacking the returns. I couldn't really like walk altogether, let alone run. I ended up winning the match, but then I told her, I'm like, I can't play tomorrow.
Right.
Just put in the system that you won. I don't really care about my UTR. I was playing it for fun. It was a prize money tournament. I don't really give a shit like if I win or lose unless there's prize money on the line. I don't care about my UTR or anything like that. And then I ended up taking like, it was a bad sprain. I was off of it for like 3 months, and I didn't start playing tennis for like 5 or 6 months.
Oh god, that would be a nightmare.
And the bruising was like all the way up like my calf.
I mean, I play every day. I would to not play would really bother me. So God forbid I had an injury where I couldn't play for a couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
That would be really hard. I mean, like, I need it every day.
I get a little bit like stressed when I don't play for like a certain amount of time. It's like,
right.
I just need to go out, move, and just one thing that I love about tennis court, or this is like for any athlete or any artist or anybody who has like a thing that they do, a passion.
Yeah.
When you're in the zone,
Yeah.
the entire world disappears when you're doing that thing. That's how I feel when I play tennis.
That was my obsession as a kid, of getting in the zone and reading about that and what did it mean and how do you get into it. And I mean, and there's times when you are super focused, you're still going to lose about 50% of the points. Even if you win the match, you're going to, I mean, like, for you to win 55% of the points in a match is a lot.
Yeah. I think Federer's at like 52 career.
Yeah.
And he's Federer.
Yeah. I mean, like, so you're still going to make some mistakes, and get beat on some points, even if you're playing at your best. But, just meeting the ball feels so nice,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just doing all the things correctly, and the ball on your strings, and when somebody hits it really hard and you can just friggin' like return it, just as hard, and like
Mhm.
you're right in the zone of that shot, that moment. Like I don't know about the overall zone for a whole match or a whole set, but like I saw you, I got ready, I was right on it, like hit it where I like. That is exciting
Mhm.
to me.
What when I was playing one of the matches I was struggling in my match that I lost in Fort Greene.
Who'd you lose to?
Uh, Feldman,
Oh, Brent. Yeah,
Brent,
Brent
yeah,
beat me.
yeah.
He's a
We
great
were supposed to
player.
play each other if you won. If you won your
I
match.
know. I know. This would have been a
Uh,
very different interview.
it would have been, and then I was trying. If I had won my match, I was gonna play Dylan McKenzie, which I'm tight with him, and that would have been a fun match as well.
If you had won what match?
That quarterfinal match against Brent,
Right.
and then I would have played Dylan.
But if it had been me,
It
then
would have been
you
you.
wouldn't have won. So then that's all.
It would have been what. We'll see. We'll see next week.
We'll see
We'll
next
see
week.
next week.
We'll see indeed.
But one thing, so one of my friends was watching that match, and he could see I was like struggling. I was not moving well. I was getting frustrated.
Yeah.
And then all he said was, "It's only you.
What does that mean?
I'm playing against the ball.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a player who's hitting the ball,
Yeah.
but if you zone in on yourself and just understand it's just me and the ball, it's kind of like what you're saying, like
Yeah.
in that moment,
Yeah.
each individual shot, he kind of like he said that to kind of change my mentality in
Yeah.
the match,
Yeah.
which has started to work. I was like, okay, you know what? It is only me. Just try to play every ball the best you can. Moving your feet, setting up.
Were you doing that? Were you really trying to hit every ball the best you could?
I was no, and that's why I lost. And part of it was I think
You seem to be wanting to win the point very quickly, or then you're like, fuck it.
yeah.
So
I mean
like,
that's what I said
first
earlier.
2 shots, you're like giving it your all, and if the point didn't end because of your first 2 shots, then you'd be like, in that match, you'd be like, oh well.
That's how I played against Nick. And fortunately,
And
I was,
Nick, it
I was
worked.
hitting my shots. Yeah.
At Brent, it didn't work.
No.
Brent's very consistent. He's a very good player.
Something I got to take back to the drawing board. But not a great serve. He did not.
Some of the guys are very aggressive. I think you're a very aggressive player. You want to end the point. You want to make me miss or hit a winner.
Mm-hmm.
Some guys are very defensive. Brent and Nick both are, and I think they would agree, they're very defensive players. That doesn't mean you're a pusher, and that's nothing against that. Like a great, I'm talking about like a great serious retriever who's going to run down all your shit, hit it back in a way that's like tough for you. He's not going to hit a winner, but he's not going to give you free points. He's not going to make unforced errors.
Sounds like Nadal.
Sure, I mean Nadal is perhaps the king of that, although Novak is pretty
He's
much a
also
defensive player.
And Murray.
Yeah, I think Roger tips a little bit more toward he wants to be offensive and create the situation. But there's different guys approach the game. I mean, I think it's in your spirit. You can't make yourself an aggressive player if that's not in your spirit. And if that's who you are as a defensive player, like, it's a lot to deal with. It's hard to deal with a really good defensive player.
What would you say your style is?
I'm aggressive. I want to try to end the point, and I'm trying to become more to accept, like, a neutral situation. Like, I've pretty much got to hit this cross court. He's standing cross court. Don't try to hit a winner. It's okay. You can just hit it to him. Make him hit 4 or 5 shots in a point. That's very hard for most people. No, I didn't even really challenge you. I just asked you to hit 4 or 5 balls in a point. Moving around a little bit, like that is very hard for most people, especially if you are playing at a certain level of pace. Because of when I was first learning the game, I still play too low to the net, and I'm trying to learn to get higher over the net. But it's very aggressive. I kind of want to take the forehand and put you in a shitty position. to where you're going to miss or you're going to make it easy for me if I'm doing what I want to do.
I saw you were like you had a really good angle on your forehand. You were able to pull it out
You
wide.
know, I never feel. Well, I've been working a lot on an open stance forehand, which allows you to go wider and to have a sharper angle, and to be more closed on the forehand backswing than I've ever been before, which gives you a lot of topspin. But I feel like I've been thinking a lot about feet, right, and like thinking about how you place your feet first before you're thinking about your hands. And really, you never really miss. You aim wrong. The ball's going to go wherever you set up. If you missed, if the ball goes out, it went exactly where your feet and the face of your racket were pointing. You just pointed in the wrong direction. So it gives me a sense of comfort, feeling like if I think about my feet and I set my feet up angled in this direction, you get under the ball, you get over the ball, it's gonna go in.
I completely agree. What I always tell like the beginner, intermediate, and even advanced, they don't need as much because they put in the mileage, but the easiest way to improve your tennis is to improve your footwork.
Yeah.
Is to being able to set yourself up in the right position, because there are times where I'm playing with somebody, they're missing a lot, and they're like, they're like doing shadow swings, and I look at them and I'm like, look, I promise you, it's not the stroke.
Yeah.
Your stroke is fine. It's your feet. You're not set up. And if I got you like a top junior, a top college player, and a top pro, and you fed them some balls to them, they're all gonna look like professional.
Yeah.
At a slow pace, but it's as you start to speed it up, the points. It's just when you start to speed it up, there's more power, more speed to it.
Yeah.
The pro is able to set up much quicker and is able to get himself into that same position.
Yeah.
To get the best shot, and it all stems from the feet.
Yeah.
Poor preparation. If you're late, if you're not leaning in, I think a lot of beginners, they struggle.
When you look at them and you see how many steps they'll take for a given ball, it's kind of insane. It's way more than what most amateurs would do.
Pros.
Yeah, the pros. Did you see the stat that 75% of American amateurs think they could get a game from a professional player in like a 2 or 3 set match?
75%.
I'm like, that you're insane. You could not.
I think the only people who are getting a game is maybe some 5-0s.
No 5-0.
I think I get a
is
game.
Getting it. No, you cannot. First of all, I'm talking about top 800 in the world. You're not breaking his serve. Period.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So
But
you're down.
my
to,
serve.
You're down to half of the games that you have even a chance at.
I got 6 service games.
You have a very big serve, but if I'm top 800 in the world, your serve is not bothering me. Right? And you haven't served to me, so I don't know how you are. I have a friend who serves very hard, but his ball goes straight. So I know so from the crack, I know where it's going to be. So I can return his serve because I'm like, your ball goes straight.
One thing that I love about tennis, you could always find ways to improve.
Yeah.
And so there's a few tweaks that I made to my serve recently that really helped me, especially against like Nick.
What did you do?
When I toss the racket up, or when I toss the ball up, all I've done from what I was doing before is instead of coming here,
I'm
coming here.
Yeah, that's huge. That's important.
And it's not only about the
toss
shoulder
and then
rotation.
twist.
I toss.
Yeah, and then you
twist.
Yeah.
And yes, you're getting the twist to get more power.
Yeah.
And this is why Federer always aced Roddick way more, is because it disguises where the serve is going to go. It's harder to see if I'm going to go down the line, down the tee, or if I'm going to go out wide.
Very few amateurs are able to pick up where you're going. Like the thing that you're getting is the increased power from really twisting your shoulders. No amateur is going to predict where your ball is going, right? Every once in a while, I can kind of go, oh, this is summing up to go forehand corner, middle, whatever. But for the most part, we're not able to do that. But this is critical. This twisting the shoulders after the toss is huge.
Yeah, and I actually one tactic that I use that gets me a lot of aces is I'll start every time. Whenever I hit a second serve, it's always a kick, and for the most part, it's to the backhand. And I'll do that for the beginning of the match.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, it's second serve, I'm getting backhand. Oh, second serve, I'm getting backhand. And then I throw in the slice.
For a second serve.
For the second serve, the other direction. And they're already leaning the other way. And so I get a lot of second serve aces off of them, not, thinking it's coming one way, but it's actually coming the other way. And then once I do it once, they're like, oh, shit, I got to start coming back on this side a little bit, which makes my backhand kick serves more effective. And then always throw it in, and then later in the match then I start to throw it in a little bit more later. But in the beginning it's only kick to the back to kind of set a baseline.
That's good in that you're thinking about it, the match or your serving strategy as a holistic thing. I find myself get to the line and only think about that moment. What is the serve that will be most effective for me right now? And most of the time, the serving to his backhand. Most people, the backhand is weaker.
You'll be surprised. You'll be surprised how many people have shit forehand returns. Because they're used to hitting open stance. They're not getting inside of it. And for the most part, people are serving to the backhand. And another serve tactic that I use is one game, I'll just only serve to the forehand. Because everybody's always expecting a little bit more to the backhand. But if you just do the forehand every single time, the first one maybe they get it. The second time they're like, okay, whatever. The third time you hit to their forehand in a row, they get kind of shook. And then the fourth time, they kind of like making readjustments to get kind of back into it. And then by the fifth time, they get used to it. And then at that point, after 6 serves, we'll see where the game is. But if I can close it out before deuce, I'll just go all to the forehand, and it shakes people because now you're like, wait, why? Because also people, you're kind of like testing their ego by saying like, they think I have a better forehand, and they start to think like, why does this guy keep serving to my forehand? It's my better side. And then you keep serving it to their forehand. They're like, oh yeah, sure, I'll show you why it's my better side. And they try to do it, and then and then you start to like, if it's not their better side, or if they make like 1 or 2 mistakes, then you've planted a seed that's gonna slowly, grow. It's like, making them start to think about their forehand when players, you don't really want to think too much when you're playing. You just want to play. You're not thinking about the stroke, you're thinking about where you want to hit it.
Right.
But then you start hitting to the same, picking on something like that, then they start to question certain things like that.
Okay.
So it's another like a serve strategy that I have. Rather than just like coming up to the
I know I should be more holistic. But then the moment comes. And then I think about, I saw a statistic on break points and game points, Djokovic plays to the backhand way more. So I'm like, well, that's what you're supposed to do. But I don't know. It's tricky.
To wrap up, I want to ask you, who is your U.S. Open prediction for men and women's? Who are getting, instead of who's your prediction, who are the key players to look out for this U.S. Open?
Well, those are 2 different questions. I mean, the second question, I don't know. It's too broad. I mean, I know who I look at. Who
are you looking out for?
I mean, I want to see Ben Shelton. I want to see Chris Eubanks do well. I love Sinner. I love Shapovalov. Obviously, we all love Alcaraz. Curious to see what any of those guys do, because they're still writing their stories. Who are they going to be? Are they going to be, elite, but middle of the road elite? Or are they going to break through, win one? We thought Sinner might become the tip top of the elite. He seems like he's trending toward being secondary, and not being one of those dominant figures. But I love him. I want to see him break through. I mean, I think we are currently in a big two, realistically, right? We have not seen Medvedev return to his top level
Mm-hmm.
since the middle of the match in Australia, right? Like he's been lower for himself. But, I mean, the guy is disgusting. I think he could reach a level where, shit, nobody can beat him on that day. But it's
Yeah.
probably Alcaraz or Djokovic, right? Every Grand Slam right now is probably Alcaraz or Djokovic.
I kind of like Medvedev. I was watching him play a little bit.
Mhm.
Because also, don't forget, he won at that clay court tournament out of nowhere. I think it was Rome.
I mean,
And then
he
he's
could.
playing the semis right now of the Montreal.
But he doesn't. What he does well does not bother Alcaraz and Djokovic.
True. Yeah, I think he plays into Alcaraz and Djokovic.
Those two guys are extraordinary. Obviously the best of all worlds would be them in the finals. 20 million people would
Another
watch.
rematch.
It would be an epic Sunday. Probably that happens. I think we are back to a situation where we have a small group at the top, and then there's sort of a moat, and then there's the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And would you put money on somebody else defeating one of the two of them before the finals? Probably not.
Probably not. I wouldn't. Don't gamble, though. It's
Why
very
not?
bad.
Why not?
I don't like to gamble.
Gambling is fun.
I used to gamble. I stopped.
It's very exciting.
It is very exciting.
It can cause depression.
It can.
It can also cause fun and excitement. It can make a boring game something very interesting. Why the fuck do you think there's anybody outside of the Midwest watching Boise State versus North Dakota State?
What's the biggest bet you've placed? Because it sounds like you've...
That's a great question.
And then I'm going to tell you a crazy story.
That's a great question. I don't know. I'm very disciplined as far as I have a unit and I place down that unit, and we don't do more because I'm more certain that this is going to happen. Like, that's ridiculous. So, I don't know. There was once I try, if you're going to do strategy, you have to really do it. This guy talked about he bet on every underdog in the NCAA tournament.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, I'm going to try that. But then when it came time to do it, I got shy as far as I bet most of the underdogs. But then the ridiculous underdogs I skipped. Obviously, Appalachia State's not going to beat Duke. So I won't put the $20 on that. Right, I'll take off the four least, but then one of them hits and you don't participate, and that's how the strategy works. That you are in on the 5,000 to 1 shots, and one of them comes in.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were like, that's never gonna happen, and you don't bet, but that was a big project, but it kind of failed because I was like, I didn't do it right.
So, the craziest story I want to tell you. It's a tennis gambling related story. Actually, I have a few of them, but I don't know if I'm going to spill those on the podcast because they're like some pretty crazy ones. Like
Okay.
mob related and...
What? Mob related?
Mob related.
What are you talking about? What you know about the mob?
I'm not going to mention any names or locations, but I'm just going to say when I was a junior, I used to practice with the son of a guy who ran one of the largest gambling rings in the world and and got investigated by the FBI and is in prison. And a big part of it was match fixing. And
Oh, wow.
and that was big in tennis.
Yeah.
Wait,
Wait, how big do you think the match fixing was? And you think it's past?
No, I think it's still current.
Really?
I mean, Gaston, did you see the stunt he pulled?
No.
So he did two things. One, he purposely took a ball out of his pocket in the middle of a point to try to get a let when he was about to lose the point, but they let the point ride. The other person won it, but he got fined like 120 grand for that. And then maybe like a couple weeks ago, he was playing this 250.
That's not cheating. That's not match fixing. He's trying to win the point. Match fixing means you're trying to lose the match.
Or so it's very. So let me tell you the other thing. So that was like one little kind of like sketchy thing. You know, it's just something.
Yeah.
It's like a flag on his record. Like that was kind of weird.
Okay.
Because you never see that. Fast forward to like a couple weeks ago, he was playing this 250. He was down love 40 on the guy's serve.
Yeah.
Match point. This
Yeah.
guy has 3 match points and he retires.
Gaston retired with match point.
No, he was down match point. He was about to lose the match. And
I
he
mean,
retires.
that sounds bad sportsmanship. That's not match fixing. We
course.
know that match fixing has occurred. How big do you think that it has been? I mean, like, I am trying to lose the match because somebody said if you lose the match, I will give you this amount of money.
It's not. So here's the misconception when it comes to match fixing. Because you've bet on sports. You could bet on the winner. You could bet on how many sets, how many games, the total games over, under. And so if you know that you need to, and it's not even that, it's also, you need to lose the, you know there's live betting on points.
Absolutely.
You need to lose the 3rd point of the 5th game of the 1st set. And we'll give you $50,000.
That's incredibly risky.
And it's that subtle. It's that subtle.
Betting on a point is ridiculous because
all you have to do is just double fault.
I know, right? Like, I mean, like we said, Djokovic, Federer, Nadal, they're still losing 45-50% of the points in a match. So I mean, like,
so
that's a real crapshoot.
But it's because the people who organize it, they place a bet on whatever
Right.
it is. So for them, it's no risk because they know unless the person doesn't do it.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, like, I could try. Like, what if you told me to lose that point? He's serving, he double faults. What am I supposed to do? I had never had a chance.
So we would need to be like on the person serve.
But how do you know that before the match? How can we communicate during the match?
Because I tell you, let's say your 3rd service game, double fault on the 2nd point. The 3rd time on your 3rd service game, double fault on the 2nd point. Or make sure you get broken in your 3rd service game.
You say that happens a lot?
I'm not saying it happens
Because we
a
know
lot.
people have said, I will lose. You're going to pay me more than I would to win.
Yeah.
So I will lose this match.
Yeah,
and
but
we've seen people who, like, you shouldn't be losing that match. And they did.
Yeah, and it's I mean, they're very strict. There's a zero tolerance policy.
But you said
But
you
it's
know
also-
it happened a lot. Are you saying it happens a lot?
I can't say how much it knows a lot because I don't have any personal accounts of it. This is he say she say, but but I do have this is what I've heard from the community that I was around because everybody knew this guy, and that's how he would make so much money. Is just 1 point, 1 game, 1 set. Just lose the first set. You could win the match, but just lose the first set, or make sure the total games is over.
Right.
15.
Right.
So, subtle things like this.
Right.
That I can't speak to how often it happens. I just know that it does, and there's things that fly under the radar.
It's crazy.
It's you just and when they do the investigation, I think Gaston is going to be investigated for that because that was just way too sus for him to retire on match point like that because
match point against
he probably didn't. He was supposed to win a certain amount of games, or he something in the scoreline. I don't think it was maybe the entire match itself, but just something didn't line up, and so if he retires, it's going to count as a default, and the match is not going to be recorded. So any bets that are placed on that match are nullified. And so he's going to be investigated for who have you been talking to for the last few months? Who do you know? Look at your call history. Who have you spoken to in the last certain amount of time?
Because he retired, bets are nullified, but nobody wins if if it's nullified.
Yeah. And so that means that somebody this is hypothetically.
Somebody told him during the match.
No, it was a prearranged
that he
was supposed to maybe get a certain amount of games or set or win the match or something like that. If you win this match, I'll give you $100,000, and he wasn't.
But that's not how it goes. We give you money to lose the match. You
to
were in
lose.
we never wouldn't give
or
you
to
money
lose a
to
certain amount of
win.
game. Maybe he didn't
You
win
can't
enough
control
games.
that. You can't control winning. You can control losing. You can guarantee you're going to lose. You cannot guarantee you're going to win.
There's a lot of it has to do with like it could have been the scoreline, for example. Like
No, I get it. I don't know.
Uh,
I don't know. We're talking about possibilities. Maybes.
But that was an interesting. Oh, so actually the tennis gambling story. There is also, I don't want to really use names because there's some high profile person is involved, a
John
celebrity.
Gotti.
Huh?
John Gotti.
No.
It's the most like solemn no. Like, of course not. The fuck.
It's a famous celebrity singer.
Will you
It's
tell
a
me
guy.
who it is?
I'll tell you afterwards.
Okay.
I'll tell you the full story
Okay.
afterwards. But so this celebrity, huge tennis fan, made a bet with my friend. My friend is a huge Nadal fan, and he's like, I bet that Nadal, and this is like maybe 5-6 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
I bet Nadal is gonna break Federer's record in Grand Slams.
Mm-hmm. Ever.
Yeah,
All time.
All time.
Mhm.
He's gonna break 20. I'll put 10 grand on this.
Jesus.
And it started off as just kind of like bullshitting, talking. He's like, "Oh yeah, you think that? Let's make a bet." So like, all right, 10 grand. Nadal's is, and this is also kind of like they bet so much money because it's also a long period of time. Like it's not just kind of like a quick thing. So he gets to 20. Nadal gets to 20, and my friend is like, "Yo, you gotta, you're gonna pay up if he wins one more." And then this guy was like, "Nah, Nadal's not winning any more Grand Slams. Double it. Let's double it." The celebrity, wanted to double it when Nadal was one Grand Slam away. My friend's like, "Sure, let's go." Well, this is
Yeah.
Nadal wins it. Wins
Yeah.
another Grand Slam. I forget which one. And so now this celebrity owes my friend 20 grand
Yeah.
and refuses to pay it. Not refuses to pay it,
What can you do?
but what my friend said is they got into a political argument, and they kind of like had a falling out. They stopped talking, and my friend thinks that this guy did it so he didn't have to pay up, which is allegedly, whatever.
Lame. You pay your bets.
And yeah, so that's how my friend is. I'll tell you who it is. You're gonna be shocked.
John Cusack.
I'm telling you, you were never gonna see this coming.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
No. You are gonna
A good
be
actor or just an okay actor?
singer, artist.
Oh, it's a singer.
He's a guy as well. That's all I'll say. Anyway, so I think that wraps it up for this episode of the Tipsy Tennis Podcast. We talked about a lot of great things. We talked a little bit about your tennis background.
heard it.
My tennis background.
We're summing it up. They already heard it.
They
They already
heard
heard it.
it.
Don't need to sum it up now. It's too late now.
Well,
We're gonna tell them what we already told them.
yes.
They know what we
Recap.
told them.
Quick announcements, some housekeeping stuff.
What? I gotta be here for this?
Yes.
Why?
Because I need you on camera to say that you're going to come to my US Open party.
I can't promise you that. Who all gonna be there?
September 10th, I'm hosting a Tipsy Tennis viewing party for the US Open Men's Finals, 4 p.m. Sunday. It's also Super Bowl Sunday, but this is the cooler thing. There's going to be like
It is?
100 people there.
The U.S. Open Finals is the same day as the Super Bowl?
Not Super Bowl, NFL Sunday. The season starts. I got it.
Day one.
Day one, not the last day, the first day. So September 5th, please check. There'll be announcements on that on social media. Follow me on
September
Instagram.
10th.
Tipsy Tennis Podcast,
September 10th.
September 10th.
You said 5th. Say 10th.
September 10th.
Where?
Venue to be determined, but most likely in Lower East Side, Manhattan.
You know, there's a lot of things happening at TBD. It's like half the events I know of are taking place at TBD. It's
What's
kind-
TBD?
TBD, to be
determined.
determined. It's amazing.
I'm gonna have a venue locked in probably by Tuesday.
No, you should name a venue to be
TBD.
determined.
Oh, we're going to TB. Where is it? TBD.
TBD? No one will ever show up.
Nobody
You
will.
never told me where. I told you where it was.
It's a terrible
It's
business
TBD.
model.
What are you talking about? Oh my god.
Sounds like a speakeasy.
Mm,
You gotta like knock a certain amount of times. So
good idea.
anyway, follow me on Instagram at Tipsy Tennis Podcast. Follow Toure at Toure Show. If you want to get some awesome content from him as well. Until next time, on the count of 3, we're gonna say stay tipsy.
Do we have to? We're gonna say stay tipsy together?
Yes.
Really?
It's corny, but
It's
I
so
do it
corny.
every episode. I got a couple pros doing it as well.
Who did it?
Miguel Reyes Varela. He's like 70 in the world in doubles.
Very impressive.
Get him on that. So, ready? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Stay tipsy.
Stay tipsy. Oh, it's late.
Thank
Good
you.
shit. Thank you. That was fun.
Oh shit! It wasn't.
Man, you better shut your fuck up, okay?